Everything you thought you knew about Joni Mitchell was a lie. Today, something happened that stunned even the most devoted fan. A confession surfaced, not from a tabloid, not from an anonymous source, but from someone who knew her intimately. Graham Nash has finally broken his silence, and though he doesn't name every dark corner just yet, one thing is certain: the stories we've been told about Joni are missing a much darker truth. The fairy tale is over. The woman once seen as the high priestess of poetic folk, the gentle genius behind timeless classics, emerges in a very different light. Behind her dreamy lyrics and delicate voice, something toxic was quietly growing. This isn't just about a romance gone wrong. It's about a pattern, a shadow that followed her through decades of music, friendships, and betrayal. What started as a whisper in Laurel Canyon is now a roar, and it's only the beginning. Picture this: it's 1968, and the vibrant streets of Laurel Canyon are alive with the sounds of revolution, music, and raw creativity. At the heart of this bohemian paradise lived two of folk rock's most iconic names, Graham Nash and Joni Mitchell. To the public, they looked like the golden couple of the counterculture movement. But behind the soft melodies and dreamy lyrics was a love story that twisted into something far darker. Graham was enchanted by Joni's brilliance. She was mysterious, poetic, and unlike anyone he'd ever met. He moved into her cozy home on Lookout Mountain Avenue, a place surrounded by trees, filled with paintings, guitars, and the scent of incense. It was a dreamy retreat, but things started to crack when Joni's emotional world proved more chaotic than anyone outside her circle imagined. Nash didn't just fall in love with a muse, he walked into a storm. Joni would vanish for days without a word, drifting into her own universe of thoughts, jealousy, and artistic obsession. Graham began to feel like a guest in her world rather than a partner. He would later confess how emotionally volatile she was. Behind closed doors, she could be charming and affectionate one moment, then cold and cutting the next. Their creative worlds clashed. Joni hated being seen as someone's girlfriend. She refused to be defined by her relationships, especially when fans seemed to idolize them as a couple. Graham, who had left his band The Hall and moved to America for her, started to feel increasingly unwanted. Every sweet moment seemed followed by days of icy silence or explosive fights. She accused him of suffocating her freedom, while he claimed she constantly made him feel small. Be surprised that people who took it, even if they were urban-born, did not come away from it with some kind of ecological. Joan's independence was legendary, but sometimes it came with a sharp edge. Think of a woman so dedicated to her art that everything else, relationships, friendships, even stability, became collateral damage. That was Joni. Her passion was unmatched, but so was her rage. As Graham struggled to hold on to their love, Joni pulled further away, locked in her obsession with total creative control. She didn't want to compromise. She didn't want to be questioned. And she certainly didn't want anyone trying to steer her. Her moods were unpredictable. One moment she would be writing music with the windows open, laughing about a melody, and the next she would hurl accusations at those closest to her. Friends and collaborators often felt they had to walk on eggshells. Some quietly distanced themselves, while others were thrown out of her life in furious storms of blame and bitterness. Joni wanted to be left alone to create, yet she was haunted by feelings of betrayal, paranoia, and anger. She believed people used her, envied her, and misunderstood her. Her home, once filled with people and music, grew quieter and colder as she built walls around herself. Her emotional distance wasn't just a phase, it became part of her legend. And as Graham finally walked away, heartbroken and hollow, Joni didn't chase after him. She turned it into a song, because that's how she processed pain, by transforming it into poetry that cut deeper than any argument ever could. But Graham wasn't the only one burned by Joni's fire. Her path through the music world left behind a trail of broken friendships, bruised egos, and unresolved bitterness. She clashed fiercely with David Crosby, whose support for her early career slowly soured into resentment. Their egos collided during recording sessions, and Joni's brutal honesty about his behavior on and off drugs left him furious. One argument at a rehearsal reportedly ended with Joni storming out, and Crosby smashing a guitar in frustration. The creative bond they once shared turned into a toxic battleground where trust collapsed. There were feuds with Bob Dylan. The two legends could barely hide their disdain. Joni often mocked Dylan's voice and songwriting, accusing him of being a plagiarist while privately resenting how much credit he got for a movement she believed she defined just as powerfully. At an event in the late 80s, she allegedly refused to share a stage with him, leading to a public dispute between their management teams. Dylan, never one to back down, returned the coldness by excluding her from key tours and collaborations, even instructing crew members to keep their dressing rooms on opposite ends of venues. Even within her circle of female artists, tensions boiled. Joni's rivalry with Joan Baez was quiet but tense, rooted in artistic competition, men they both loved, and Joni's refusal to be part of any sisterhood she felt threatened her individuality. At one benefit concert in the early 70s, Joni refused to harmonize with Baez, claiming her voice was too self-righteous. The two never fully reconciled. Stevie Nicks too would later call her impossible after a failed attempt to connect backstage in the late 70s ended with Joni allegedly snapping at her, accusing her of being a witchy groupie, not a real songwriter. The interaction left Nicks in tears and others in stunned silence. Joni didn't just isolate herself emotionally. She built artistic walls so high that few could scale them. She would cancel meetings last minute, ignore phone calls, and lash out at producers who tried to guide her direction. Critics who once praised her began to hesitate. Journalists called her difficult. Labels struggled to work with her, labeling her sessions as unmanageable. Yet Joni didn't bend. She saw enemies everywhere and, in doing so, created a world in which trust became a rare and fragile thing. As her professional world smoldered with conflict, Joni's private life was no less chaotic. Beneath the surface of her carefully guarded persona lay deep personal wounds, some self-inflicted, others inherited. Long before she was a star, Joni made a decision that haunted her for decades, giving up her daughter for adoption in 1965. She was a broke, unknown artist and alone. That loss carved a hollow space in her, one that would bleed into her lyrics, her relationships, and her trust in others. For years, she kept it a secret, telling almost no one, not even those closest to her. When the story finally surfaced in the 90s, it stunned the world. But those in her inner circle had already felt the emotional ripples. The pain of that decision hardened her, fueling her sense of isolation and her bitterness toward anyone who challenged her. Her relationship with her parents was just as strained. Joni often described her childhood in Saskatoon as cold and confining. Her mother strict and emotionally distant. Her father pragmatic and disapproving. She fled that world as soon as she could, but the emotional damage lingered. Even after fame, she rarely returned to her hometown, and her contact with family remained limited. The deeper into her success she fell, the further away she drifted from her roots. In later years, Joni would battle serious health issues, including Morgellons disease, which isolated her even more. Some believed her complaints were exaggerated, others accused her of paranoia. She lashed out at doctors, friends, even fans, accusing them of not taking her seriously. Her mental and physical struggles were dismissed by many, and in response, she pushed people further away. From secret children to shattered family ties and public breakdowns, Joni's personal life was filled with shadows. The pain was real, but so were the walls she built to keep everyone out. Joni's brilliance was undeniable, but it came at a staggering cost. Her genius demanded solitude, obsession, and emotional sacrifice. While her fans worshipped her lyrical depth and melodic daring, few understood what it took from her, or from those around her. She chased artistic perfection with ruthless determination. If collaborators couldn't match her intensity, she'd discard them without apology. Sessions that were meant to be collaborative often became war zones, with Joni rewriting arrangements in real time and rejecting any suggestion she didn't originate. One producer in the early 80s left mid-album, calling the experience psychological torture. Another guitarist described recording with her as like trying to paint while someone lit the canvas on fire. Even lovers who once inspired her music found themselves cast aside when they couldn't meet her emotional or creative expectations. Her albums may have won awards and inspired generations, but behind them was a woman increasingly alone, guarded, and exhausted by the very art that made her famous. Joni had achieved everything: Grammy Awards, critical acclaim, and a legacy that would last for decades. Yet with each year, her circle grew smaller, fewer friends, fewer allies, and ever-thickening armor around her heart. She created masterpieces, yes, but she also created distance. In the end, Joni's life was a portrait of contrast, a woman loved by millions but often unloved in private, a voice that gave comfort to others but could not quiet her own unrest. The price of genius wasn't just paid in sleepless nights and late studio hours. It was paid in isolation, conflict, and a history of broken bonds that no song could ever fully mend. Now that the veil has lifted, the question remains: how do we remember Joni Mitchell? As a tortured genius? A misunderstood icon? Or as a woman whose sharp edges cut not only through the noise of the industry but also through the people who once stood by her side? For every masterpiece she gave the world, there's a story buried behind it. A lover pushed away, a friendship destroyed, a night of silence that echoed louder than applause. Her music lives on, haunting and beautiful, but so do the scars. From Laurel Canyon to the Grammys, from backstage whispers to broken homes, Joni's story isn't just one of talent. It's one of survival, yes, but also one of damage. Today's revelations don't erase her art, they complicate it. They make the beauty more haunting, the melodies more piercing, the silence between notes louder than ever. Because now we know what was hidden in those pauses. And maybe, just maybe, the real song Joni was writing all along was never meant to be sung, but lived in the silence of everything she never said out loud. Will look like in the future? Let us know in the comments. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe. We'll see you next time.